Open raise, get called. In online poker games, the most common pre-flop tree you will play is simple. You open raise and someone calls. No 3-bet, no fireworks, just a pot that is big enough to matter and ranges that are still wide enough to make mistakes. If you treat this spot as autopilot, you leak in 3 places. Your open size drifts. Your range gets too loose in rake-heavy pools. Then post-flop, you start hoping to connect instead of understanding why your range is profitable. Let's build a clean, repeatable framework for open raise and call scenarios. You will know what to open, why it works, and how the caller's position changes everything. What this scenario really is. An open raise and call pot is a heads-up pot where you enter as the pre-flop aggressor and go to the flop without a 3-bet. This matters because pre-flop aggression buys you 2 things, initiative and range definition. Initiative means you control the first big decision on most flops. Range definition means your opponent capped themselves relative to you, not always weak, but usually missing the strongest hands that would 3-bet on most online sites. Relative strength is everything here. You are not playing your 2 cards, you are playing your range versus their range, with the rake taking a small bite out of both. Rake changes your thresholds, not your fundamentals. Online rake is real, especially in lower and mid-stakes games. It punishes small edges and rewards hands that make strong, easy-to-realize equity situations. That does not mean you should become an it. It means your marginal opens and marginal calls need to be justified by position and realization. As the opener, rake pushes you towards slightly tighter opens from early position and slightly less pure trash from the button. As the caller, rake is even more brutal because calling realizes equity less cleanly than raising, and you surrender initiative. So we keep the core plan intact, open aggressively in position, open tighter out of position, and avoid the "I can see a flop" disease. Anti-hope poker wins. Open raising, build a range that prints. Your open range should be driven by 3 inputs: position, who is left to act, and player type in the blinds and behind you. Most players only think about position. Strong players think about the entire lineup. When multi-tabling online, you need defaults that are solid and fast. Then you tweak on specific reads. If the blinds are tough 3-betters, you tighten your weakest opens. If the blinds are passive callers, you can open slightly wider and expect more post-flop value lines. Here are clean default ideas for 100 big blinds cash games. Do not memorize the exact combos, memorize the logic. First, under the gun in MP, open tighter, prioritize hands that can barrel and value bet well, like ace-king suited, ace-queen suited, pocket jacks and better, and suited broadways. Add suited connectors selectively when the table is passive and you will realize equity. Second, cut off, widen into suited aces, more broadways, and more suited connectors because you will play more in position and face fewer players left to act. Third, button attack. Your button open is one of the highest expected value actions in poker. You can open wide, but keep a rake-aware filter. Hands that make dominated top pairs, like weak offsuit kings, become more dangerous when you get called by the blinds. Fourth, small blind. Be careful. You will be out of position post-flop versus the big blind. Many players over-open here and then bleed on flops and turns. A tighter, more linear range is usually higher expected value. Your sizing should also be stable. Most pools use 2.0x to 2.5x from most positions, sometimes 3.0x from small blind. Smaller opens give you better risk-reward and keep your range wide. Bigger opens reduce calls but increase pot size when called. Context dictates strategy, so have a default and adjust to the caller tendencies. The caller's range, why it looks the way it does. When your open gets called, the caller is usually representing a blend of medium-strength hands and speculative hands. In online pools, many players are under 3-betting, especially in the blinds, which means some very strong hands can appear as calls. Still, over a large sample, the top of their range is somewhat capped compared to yours. Typical calling buckets include: first, pocket pairs like pocket 2s to pocket 10s that either set mine too much or try to play fit or fold post-flop. Your job is to punish that passivity with pressure on boards that miss them. Second, suited broadways like King-Queen suited, Queen-Jack suited, Jack-10 suited that play well. Post-flop and can defend versus C-bets. Third, suited connectors like 7-6 suited to 10-9 suited, higher expected value when deep and in position, lower expected value when short and out of position. Fourth, Ace-X suited hands that can make nut flushes, but often make weak pairs and get value owned if played passively. One leak you must stop endorsing is passive set mining without the right price and implied odds. If someone calls 2.5x at 100 big blinds and plans to fold every non-set flop, they are lighting money on fire. You cannot rely on that mistake always being present, but when you identify it, you barrel them off their equity. Who called you matters more than your hand. Open raise and call is not one scenario, it is several. The same open from the cutoff plays totally differently when the caller is the button versus the big blind. Their position changes how much equity they realize and how often they can punish you with floats and turns. First, you open and the button calls. Your opponent has position. Expect higher realization, more floats, and more delayed aggression. Your post-flop plan needs stronger value betting thresholds and cleaner bluff selection. Second, you open and the big blind calls. You have position. This is your bread and butter spot. You can apply pressure with C-bets and turns and you get to realize your equity well. Third, you open and the small blind calls. You have position, but the small blind range can be tighter. Be careful with automatic wide C-bets on boards that smash their cold call range. Always ask one question before the flop even comes. Who is left to act when you open and who is gaining position when they call? Pre-flop decisions are not isolated. They are setups for post-flop expected value. Expected value logic, why opening works. When you open, you risk a small amount to win the blinds and antes, plus you build a pot where your range typically has an edge. A simplified expected value view is expected value open roughly equals fold equity times immediate pot plus call probability times your post-flop expected value minus 3 bet probability times your response expected value. In the open and call branch, your edge comes from 3 sources. First, many callers play too honestly post-flop. Second, you often have the stronger range, especially on high card boards. Third, you have initiative, which often lets you realize equity more efficiently. Rake reduces the immediate reward of winning small pots and increases the value of cleaner, bigger edges. That is why suited, connected hands and strong broadways tend to outperform trashy offsuit hands, even if both look playable on paper from late position. What you should avoid. Most leaks in open raise and call games are psychological. People hate folding. People love seeing flops. That mindset is expensive. First, opening hands that make dominated top pairs too often, especially offsuit King X and Queen X from earlier seats. Second, calling because you are priced in without asking how well you realize equity out of position. Third, failing to anticipate the caller's plan. A regular calling in position is not the same as a recreational player calling in the big blind. Fourth, overlimping. Open raise, build ranges, create mistakes. Limping invites multi-way rake traps and reduces your ability to win pots with initiative. Hand scenario, the standard button squeeze point. Game, 100 big blinds online cash. You are on the button and open to 2.3 big blinds with Jack-10 of hearts. The small blind folds, the big blind calls. Flop, Queen of spades, 7 of diamonds, 2 of hearts. Pot is 4.8 big blinds. Action, big blind checks. UC bet 1.6 big blinds. Big blind calls. Coaching. This is a clean example of why open and call spots print. Your range has a strong density of Queen X, overpairs, and ace high that can barrel. The big blind has a lot of 7X, pocket pairs, and floats. Your hand has 2 overcards plus a backdoor flush, and you deny equity to hands like 9-8, 6-5, and ace-5. If the turn is a 9 of clubs, you pick up an open-ender and can continue betting aggressively on many runouts because your story is coherent. If the turn is a low brick like the 3 of spades, you can still apply pressure versus capped pairs, but you should be more selective. Versus a sticky caller, you slow down. Versus a fit or fold player, you double barrel frequently. Practical adjustments you can make today. These are high expected value tweaks that work on most online sites without needing perfect reads. First, tighten early, widen late, but do not pretend button trash is free money. Choose hands that flop equity and can barrel. Second, raise first. In more, call less. Calling is where players hide leaks. If you are not sure, either fold or consider a 3-bet in the right matchup. Third, versus big blind callers, c-bet a lot on high card boards and dry textures. Your range advantage is real and they miss often. Fourth, versus in position callers, keep your bluffs lower frequency and your value bets more robust. They realize equity better and will punish thin lines. Fifth, size with intent. If you open small, you invite calls and play more pots. If you open bigger, you reduce calls but increase variance. Pick the strategy that exploits the pool in front of you. Most importantly, be honest about why a hand is in your range. It might flop good is not a reason. A real reason is it has strong equity. Versus the calling range, it plays well in position and it can win multiple streets when it improves. Key takeaway. In open raise and call pots, you print by opening a position, aware, rake-aware range, then leveraging initiative and range advantage against capped calling ranges. Stop seeing flops with hands that realize poorly, especially out of position. Always factor who is left to act before you open and let the caller's position dictate how wide you can pressure post-flop. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. In an open raise and call pot, what 2 advantages does pre-flop aggression buy you according to the article? Answer: initiative and range definition. Explanation: the opener controls the first big decision on many flops, initiative, and the caller is often capped compared to the opener, range definition. Question 2. How does online Rake change your approach in these spots, and which role is hit harder by Rake? The opener or the caller? Answer: Rake tightens the thresholds for marginal hands without changing the fundamentals, and it punishes the caller more than the opener. Explanation: the article notes Rake makes small edges worse and calls realize equity less cleanly because the caller gives up initiative. Question 3. What 3 inputs should drive your open-raising range selection in 100 big blinds online cash games? Answer: position, who is left to act, and player type behind and in the blinds. Explanation: the article emphasizes building defaults from position while factoring remaining players and adjusting to tough 3-betters or passive callers. Question 4. Why does who called you matter so much, and what does the article say to expect when the button calls your open? Answer: position changes, equity realization, and counterplay. When the button calls, expect higher realization, more floats, and more delayed aggression. Explanation: the article explains the same open plays very differently depending on whether the caller has position, which affects bluffing and value thresholds. Question 5. In the hand scenario, button opens Jack of Hearts. 10 of Hearts, big blind calls, what is the flop? What c-bet size is used, and what is the main coaching reason the bet works? Answer: flop is Queen of Spades, 7 of Diamonds, 2 of Hearts. C-bet is 1.6 big blinds into 4.8 big blinds. It works because the button has range advantage and initiative and denies equity while telling a coherent range story. Explanation: the article highlights the button's strong density of Queen X over pairs and Ace High that can barrel versus the big blind's many pairs and floats, making the C-bet a profitable pressure point. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.